Good evening, and thank you for joining us. Tonight, we're covering a significant development in one of the most closely watched cases in America, the Epstein Files. The Department of Justice has filed a motion to block the appointment of an independent monitor who would oversee the release of documents related to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein and his associate Ghislaine Maxwell. Let me walk you through what's happening and why it matters. Back in November, Congress passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act with overwhelming bipartisan support. The House voted 427 to 1. The Senate approved it unanimously. President Trump signed it into law, requiring the Department of Justice to release all unclassified records related to Jeffrey Epstein within 30 days. That deadline was December 19th. The DOJ released some files that day, but here's the problem. They admitted earlier this month that they still haven't released over 2 million documents. According to multiple reports and analyses, less than 1% of the total files have actually been made public. The documents that were released came with heavy redactions. We're talking about hundreds of pages completely blacked out. Now, the law does allow for certain redactions to protect victims' privacy and ongoing investigations, but lawmakers and victims' advocates say many of the redactions go far beyond what's legally permissible. Some redactions have been found to contain information that was previously released in other contexts, meaning the government already made it public before. Enter Representatives Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie. These two lawmakers, a Democrat and a Republican respectively, co-sponsored the Transparency Act. Last week, they filed what's called an amicus brief with Judge Paul Engelmeyer, who's overseeing the Ghislaine Maxwell case. In their filing, they stated they have urgent and grave concerns about the DOJ's failure to comply with the act. They asked the judge to appoint a special master or independent monitor. This person would ensure the DOJ actually releases all the documents as required by law, verify that redactions are appropriate, and provide transparency about what's being withheld and why. On Friday, the Department of Justice responded with a motion to block this request. Their argument? They claim federal courts don't have the authority to enforce the Epstein Files Transparency Act. They also argue that because Khanna and Massie weren't parties in the Maxwell criminal case, they don't have legal standing to make this request. The DOJ's position is that the Epstein Files Transparency Act doesn't provide a cause of action for judicial enforcement. In legal terms, that means they're saying the law has no teeth, no mechanism for courts to force compliance, even though it clearly states the Attorney General shall release the documents. Representative Khanna pushed back, telling the Associated Press that the DOJ misconstrued his request. He said, "We are informing the court of serious misconduct by the Department of Justice that requires a remedy, one we believe this court has the authority to provide, and which victims themselves have requested." This matters because we're not just talking about any case. Jeffrey Epstein was charged with sex trafficking in 2019. He died in federal custody before trial in what was ruled a suicide, though that finding remains controversial. Ghislaine Maxwell, his longtime associate, is currently serving a 20-year sentence for trafficking underage girls to be abused by Epstein over the course of a decade. The victims of these crimes have been calling for full transparency. They want to know who enabled Epstein, who looked the other way, and how his network operated for so long. Many believe the files contain information about powerful individuals who may have been involved or aware of his crimes. The political pressure is mounting from all sides. This isn't a partisan issue. Democrats and Republicans alike are demanding the files be released. The public wants answers. According to polls conducted last year, over 90% of Democrats, 78% of independents, and 74% of Republicans support releasing the Epstein files. Judge Engelmeyer is expected to rule on this motion in the coming weeks. His decision could determine whether there's any independent oversight of the DOJ's compliance with the law, or whether the department will continue to control the process entirely on its own terms. The bottom line is this: Congress passed a law with near unanimous support. The president signed it. It required full release of these files. That hasn't happened. And now the very department tasked with enforcing our laws is asking a court to say nobody can force them to follow this one. As this unfolds, we'll continue to follow every development, because at its core, this story is about accountability, transparency, and whether justice truly applies to everyone. We'll keep you updated as Judge Engelmeyer weighs his decision.